action. But no, good morning. And honestly, I guess what it's the end of 2020, so we're bringing it in all the way in full effect. And I know we've talked about this for a little while. Being able to get some of these next steps in. So I'm definitely excited to have you joining us. So I want to more formally welcome you, Mr. Beals, Mr. Keonte Beals. I want to welcome you to our journey of voices. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And I'd actually like to turn it over to you and just to give us a little brief. Who are you?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me. I'm Keonte Beals. I'm from North Preston, Nova Scotia. I am a singer-songwriter, performer, producer, and now business owner. I've been basically doing music since I was the age of 6, and I'm now 23, about to turn 24. And it's been a crazy journey. It's been a good one, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. So,
I appreciate it. And even where, you started us off and gave us a little bit of, who you are, but also community was a part of that. So
mhm.
I'd love to, actually start there on the journey because um, childhood, community, like where we're raised, has such a big impact on us, not just at the beginning, but in terms of the rest of the journey of our life, right? In terms of the things we're interested and passionate about. So I would love to hear a little bit more on, who was Keonte growing up, or where you when you were younger. What was community? What was that like? In terms of, I guess, the younger Keonte.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as a younger Keontae goes, I definitely was somebody who was, I guess, still in the same way. Like I just observed a lot. I didn't say much. Um, I was just always watching and observing what people were doing. So as a kid, I definitely was that way, and I would just look at how the community reacted to certain things. So first of all, being from North Preston definitely taught me about strength. Taught me to have strong faith. It taught me to be optimistic in situations that may not look like it's going to turn out in a great way. Being from North Preston, there's automatically a stigma that's placed on us. So we kind of have to fight through that every day and just kind of show positive lights to kind of fight off some of the negative vibes that we receive and that has been talked about my community. So, but for me, experience North Preston or up home as we call it, it was just a place full of love. You could really stop in anybody's place, and you hear this this one about North Preston all the time. But you really could stop in anybody's house and get a full cooked meal if you needed a place to stay. That was a place, and that was kind of what I got. I got to see firsthand what it takes a community was like. Everybody in the community kind of gave me a little bit more than what I could have gotten from the community or outside of the community. So it was just, I don't know, man. It taught me a lot. It taught me a whole bunch about what family is and how to love somebody and how to show that even more than just telling them.
Everything you're speaking about. There's a whole lot in what you're saying,
Mm,
but the power of community, right? And the power, especially in the Black community or in the Afro diaspora, of our culture. As you're saying, like it really does take a community to raise one of our own. Um,
yeah.
and I think that's the power of even during, especially now, right? Even in the midst of, the pandemic,
Mm,
the importance of community, all
yeah.
the things you're speaking to. And I know because we've spoken outside of this,
Mhm,
um, but those are the things you have to double down in. That resilience, the things that, um, you had that opportunity to be exposed to different people, uh, and, and,
mhm.
and then also how that shapes you. And so, in that, what were some of those maybe impactful, like, growing up, would you say that because you had exposure to the wider community, were there more role models or more mentors, or how was that dynamic, maybe a little bit more unique because, you're really coming from community? What was that like?
Yeah, so a lot of my mentors, I mean, definitely came from my community, North Preston. So a lot of the things that I felt were instilled in me as a kid, was instilled in them too, and maybe even deeper because they go closer back to the roots of North Preston in the community. So just kind of having that and everything kind of be based through faith was something that was huge for me. I think honestly, like bits and pieces of everybody and their faith and how they kind of interacted with their own um, faith kind of built a lot of strength in my own faith and kind of directed me in a lot of good a lot of good different ways. And I'm grateful for everybody who even just took the time to instill any of that in me.
And that's something I appreciate, that you always center. Is that team, or is that aspect of, it's not just you,
Mhm.
because that is a reality for yourself, for everybody. The successes that we have, and the opportunities that we have. There are many hands, that have put us in that situation, and absolutely we're the ones that have to execute, or have to get the note, or have to get things mixed up or do the advocating. Um, but it's all those the small things which aren't so small, and they add up.
Mhm.
And it is this other thing that you're talking about, and so we got to dig into it a little bit more. But faith, and faith is one. I want to dig in the first bit of why is faith so important, um, and two, like what can faith mean? Because I think also in this new era, especially being clear, for young men of African descent, um, being able to be strong and celebrated in faith, but also understanding that faith can mean many things and it can look a whole lot of ways is important. So I would love to kind of take the conversation there also. Why is it important, when we look at having to be resilient or having to kind of endure, as you already spoke about?
Yeah, I mean, faith is important. Listen, I can't do anything without having like the belief that what I'm doing is going to execute the way that I want it to execute, and that's faith. Um, so right from the get go, for me, is faith is definitely like something that's super important with anything that you're doing, and you don't even have to be somebody who is like super religious or super into all of that world to have faith, faith and hope in things that you can't see. That's what faith is. So that's like for me, like it's like the building or the foundation of what um your dreams or the things that you're inspiring to do um is should be built on. It's just faith that first of all I can believe that this is gonna work. Now how are we gonna go about doing it? How are we gonna build the rest of it?
That's powerful. um, and the other side of faith is, that unknown, which I definitely want to dig into. um, So, even in terms of that unknown element, right? Because
Mhm.
having not just blind faith, because
Yeah.
as you said, you don't have to be religious. You don't have to, it's not just about spirituality. It's not just about one thing. Faith is, as you said, the belief in something. And sometimes it can be scary because that something can be 4 years down the road, six
Mhm.
years down the road. It could be, or it could be tomorrow, or later today. And so, in that unknown element, what are some things that, especially with the many hats that you wear, your day to day, what are some ways that you are able to navigate or able to get through that unknown or uncertainty?
For me personally, it's just about how much work I do on myself, getting to know myself, um, and just knowing like what my triggers are. What triggers worry for me, and how I go about dealing with that. Because we're all human. There's definitely times where you feel like you want to do something, but you may be afraid of some things that are included with that or how it's going to execute and how it's going to be received as an artist. For me, I mean, that's my everyday life. You are continuing to put yourself out there and just kind of hoping that your authenticity will kind of reach everybody else and hopefully touches somebody else. Um, so I don't know, man. It's it can be tricky when it comes to um just believing in the art that you create, because sometimes it's you're afraid that somebody won't get it the way um, that you wrote it. And so it's just important, just honestly, just to have faith and to believe that whatever you're doing, that that you're doing it from an authentic place, and um, that you want good for it, that you want good to come out of it. And for me, it's just about being in tune with yourself, just knowing yourself, knowing who you are, and um, being able to work through from within to outside. And that's kind of just what's worked for me.
Nothing but respect. There's nothing more important, than being authentic to yourself without having that self awareness,
Hmm.
right? Or without being able to say like, here are the things that I care about, or here's what I believe in, or here's what I hope for. You can't really be grounded, and I think being authentic is a part of growing and learning. And as you're talking about that, you've already spoke about your passions, and how that is tied into hope, how that's tied into unknown, how that's tied into being authentic. Um, how about we dive a little bit more into, what are some of the passions? What are some of those things that, I guess, along with your values, um, but what are some things that Keonte Beals is passionate about?
Yeah. So number one, I mean, we've already kind of touched base on it. I mean, we just talked about it, but I'm actually passionate about being authentic. Um, First of all, that's like the first thing. Everything I do, I want to be authentic in it. I don't care about telling some of my stories, and um, even if they may be quote unquote embarrassing to some people, I believe that growth happens when you're uncomfortable, and just have to have those kind of conversations. So outside of that, outside of authenticity, of course, music is a huge passion for me. Um, and that's been my whole life since a kid. As well as kids are definitely a passion for me. I have two younger siblings, um, and for me, at times they feel like they're my kids, because I feel like I put a lot of time and effort in teaching them some of the things that I've been taught, but also from a perspective of today rather than of the judgment of the past. So just teaching them to be open minded, and to accept things that maybe they don't accept for themselves. So ways that other people may be, or the things that other people may believe in, being fine with that as long as you're confident in yourself. So yeah, authenticity, music, and children, I think, are definitely my biggest passion passions.
Listen, I can appreciate all of those, and especially as you mentioned, at a time now, right?
Yeah.
Resurgence of civil rights. The civil rights movement is continuing to go, but more persons are having that conversation, or are being challenged to have that conversation. But what does that look like for us and in community, especially where we've been directly in this conversation
Yep.
so long? And so, how do they be? How can we make sure that everybody's supported? And as you're saying, that's making sure that the youngins, or our family, and whichever age, um, but are in a position to have people that are not just giving them, okay, here's how I was raised, but
Hmm.
also here's what that looks like now. Here are the facts of now,
Hmm.
and that's also something that, in terms of keeping it to the authenticity piece, that's an opportunity for everybody to explore that even more, and to learn the importance of authenticity and being grounded in yourself at a
Hmm.
young age, because all of those things tie back into value,
Hmm.
right? And not just here are the things that I value, but your actual sense of self, and sense of self worth, and
Hmm.
knowing that you have value, um, because as it goes into, just as you spoke about some of those, there's setbacks and there's challenges in everything, and that's part of life. But especially along your journey towards your passions. So even in terms of, or even along your journey there, whether it was with music, whether it was with academics, whether family, what are some of the setbacks that you found that have, ended up being milestones for you to, transition or deal with some of these changes?
Yeah, so one big thing that I thought was and I'm saying I thought, right? I thought was a major setback for me was that um starting out I didn't have a team. Um I didn't have a team. It was just kind of me doing everything, and I thought that that was a setback. That, geez, like everybody's kind of doing something with their team, and or they have somebody who is kind of mentoring them consistently and just kind of there and handling stuff for them, and doing all the things that um, a team would do that would cover for you while you get to kind of focus on the creative parts of it. And I used to really like I used to dread that so much, and I went out of my way a lot of the times trying to find that, and it just wasn't working for me. I don't know if in the beginning um, it was hard for people to believe in me the way that I believed in me, or if it was just that they just couldn't see it in the beginning, which is fine. Um, it all makes sense to me now. What I thought was actually hurting me in the beginning was actually creating me and making me so much stronger. Um, Man, like, because now, because I had to do all those things, I can actually manage those things now that I have a team. I can be in the studio, and while we're mixing, I can say, yeah, I think that you should change the frequency around 2K in my vocal because it'll just make it brighter. Or I can say, this should be in this marketing plan because this is what my fan base likes, and I know this because I've studied this for years. So I'm just able to be in the conversation, and also, man, like when I first started and I was like meeting, uh, having to go to network and meet people, I was just the worst. That was like the worst thing for me at the time. Like I was super shy. I was no good with conversation in that way, but I did it though. I did it. Like I pushed myself to go, and I would be shaking like hell, and I'd be sweating and super nervous. And I'm sure they could tell. I'm sure they could tell that. But because I did that, now I can go out and have a conversation with anybody. So a lot of the things that were setbacks or that seemed like setbacks to me actually really strengthened like everything that I'm doing right now. Like funding was something for me in the beginning that I couldn't wrap my head around. So I learned how to play piano so that I didn't have to take anybody with me when I go to do shows that, in the beginning were free. That I was just trying to get my name out there. I learned how to play piano so I could play for myself. I learned how to work the studio gear and mic and live sound and all of those different things, so that I wouldn't have to spend the money because I didn't have it. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the funding. I didn't have anyone backing me up. So now I know how to do all those things, and I produce my full album as well as mixing and as well as the artwork and all those things. And I wouldn't have been able to do any of that had it not been for the beginning stages, where I was just kind of learning and taking the time to really just perfect my craft. So my setbacks end up being, blessings in disguise. And I honestly wouldn't change any of it. It really did a good number for me.
I already know what I'm gonna say. I already know. That message for real, that message of the challenge and the journey becomes the richness.
Mm.
You know, is so steady in what you're saying. Absolutely. It's the entrepreneurial journey. It's I think if we the hero's journey, if you zoom out and look at, some of the texts, like, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
that's a personal journey for everybody, in terms of like we're all going to be tested with things that are difficult, um, even when they're interested, even when it's stuff that we're like, listen, this is how I want to make money. How come all these things are popping up in my, like, damn, I need less challenges, I need more money, I need more opportunities, um, and that's a reality for everyone. And so, as you're saying, being able to double down on the things that you value, um, you know, being authentic to yourself, to your brand, um, but then also being intentional okay, well, how can I build a team so it's not just on myself? All of those bits are critical because I think for all of us, it's exactly that message. Like whether it's in music, whether it's in business, at the workplace for someone else, with someone else, in school, there's things that you can do alone, and the more you can learn on your own, and get comfortable learning on your own, the better you'll do in the bigger picture. But then you can have and be a part of more of those conversations, right? But it's like, as you're saying, the prime minister or the CEO, or the president, and when you're at the stuff, you can't make all of the decisions. You have to bring your best, and I think the other side is we all have so much decision making energy throughout the day.
Mhm.
So that's another place of where team is so important because you can bring your best self and start to limit how many decisions you make or focus on just making so many high quality decisions and putting other people in a position to grow their voice and their experience, but also valuing that they have their own knowledge and they can make some quality decisions too,
Mhm.
um, which is scary, having a balance, or having to go through that. um, for you, would you say that, just to zoom out or kind of put a pin in it, what is the importance of team? If you could kind of speak to, um, the wider, community, youth, whatever the case may be, but the importance of team in success, or in at least reducing stress. How about that? What's the importance of team in reducing stress?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, to be real about it, it doesn't matter like how many things that you go and you learn, and there's only 24 hours in a day. So there's only so much that you can do, there's only so much that you can perfect over time. You got to really just focus on the priorities. So just having a team in place is just people who are experts in certain fields that you're not. So even though you do know how to mix and master, you have somebody on your team, an engineer on your team who's been doing it for years, probably even before you were born. So like they have even more experience. It's just about like putting your operations in the hands of others who have been doing it, for and maybe not even longer, but it's their profession. This is where they focus in. And they can execute it better than you, or else why would you have them a part of your team? So that's like that alone is stress free. Like for me, having certain conversations with people um, can be a challenge. And so like I have folks um, who are on my team who have those, I call them gate conversations because it's the gate before you have the conversation with me. They'll have those conversations and then they'll come back to me and let me know what's going on, and what's the deal. And then if we break bread, then um, I meet the person, and we have good conversation. I bring to the table what um, I'm an expert in, which is performance and um, creativity. So it's just about honestly being real with yourself, and expanding the things that you can do, because really that's exactly what it does. It just allows you to reach further, and of course there's less stress with that. So yeah, I definitely recommend having the team, but some people um, can't get to that phase until they really put the effort into their craft. You gotta be good. You gotta be good at it, at whatever you're doing. You gotta be good. People will take notice of your hard work, and they'll know that you're serious if you're really serious about it. That's the important part of it.
And that balance, gets us right into this next question that I'd like to kind of bridge into two. And we kind of touched on each a little bit, but I would like to, almost put a pin in them and hear a little bit about, I guess, what self care, like, what is the importance of self care, um, and then also kind of tie that to networking, right? Because they're kind of two ends of the spectrum.
Mm,
And I think everybody has again there's I think everything is a scale, right? So you can be more introverted, you can be more extroverted, it could be more this day, it could be less this day. But I think the reality is, self-care is also a spectrum, right? That's where mental health, physical health. Um, but I think, because my belief that every individual is a business. Not everybody's an entrepreneur, but everybody's a business.
mhm,
And so, especially for entrepreneurs, but as everybody, I think networking is something that has to happen just as a part of your day, right? If you're trying to grow and learn, that means you should be meeting different people. Doesn't matter if it's all in person or some over digital, but you should be meeting new people because if you're not growing, I think you're dying a little bit at least. And then the other side is also self-care. That's something that even in having these conversations like with yourself, other young professionals, other professionals, even in the family space, I think like it's something where we get kind of super caught up in, where we go super hard, or we do all the networking, we do all the work, as you're saying, we try to perfect our craft all week, and then it's like, dang, okay, I'm gonna give myself 1 or 2 days to try to recharge or focus on all this stuff. Or like,
yeah,
I'm gonna get a couple days in the next 3 weeks.
mm,
Um, I, again, it's everything's a spectrum, so it works differently for everyone. But I think in that same note, self care is something that has to happen, even in a little bit every day. To that same side. So I'd love to kind of zoom into that part of the conversation, of what is the importance of self care. What does that look like for you? And then on the other side, what does that look like with networking? And what's the importance of networking?
mhm. So I'm actually going to start with the networking because for me it'll lead into the self care part and what I do to kind of combat that. But networking, first of all, I am most definitely an introvert. And anybody who really focuses on introvert and extrovert, you know that it just has all to do with just energy, how we charge our energy. So for me, being an introvert, I definitely love to meet new people. Like that's something that I just love to do. I love to meet new people. I like to go out and meet new people. But I also understand how I am and that I need to recharge and do all those things. So um, I know that there's a time limit of what's good for me to meet new people, which is where self care comes in. Uh, so yes, I do love to go out and meet new people and do all those things, but I know that there's a time limit. So self care for me is just about knowing yourself and knowing what's good for you, and that takes time. It takes time. It takes a lot of time to just kind of know yourself and get to know yourself, and just it's just about going out and living and trial and error. I spoke about like going out and meeting new people and networking, and that I was so nervous and whatever the case may be. At that point, I didn't understand that I actually needed time to recharge before going into the next conversation. And there was definitely conversations and meetings and stuff that I definitely bombed big time because I didn't allow myself that self care and that time to recharge. Um, but for me, self care is having a conversation, even with friends or the people that you trust, about things that are going on in your life, and being able to get those things out rather than holding them in, which was absolutely what I used to do. I would hold that stuff in and not talk about it. So talking about those things that are on your mind, good or bad, and it doesn't need to be a negative thing. Sometimes it's a positive thing and you're just excited and you're happy. It's just about allowing yourself to feel that, to feel whatever you're feeling. Um, Self-care for me looks like going on hikes and being in nature or being close to water. Uh, and that's a big one for me, just being close to water. For me, water is so large and so big that it can make, for me, your problems feel small. So um, those are two big things for me. And also just spending time with yourself. And well, for me, I'm an introvert, so that's a big one for me. But spending time with yourself and grooming yourself, make sure you look good and feel good, and it's not for anybody but yourself. Um, so yeah, those are my three things.
I appreciate you shedding light on that balance,
Hmm.
and especially with the grooming bit, because that's, just like with whether the clothing or just stuff like all of these different bits are finding ways to celebrate yourself.
Hmm.
And I think, we can never, well, maybe some people could spend too much time doing it, but for the most part, you cannot, you can never spend enough time celebrating yourself in at least the little ways. As we're going through this, I'd love to almost put a pin in. you know
Hmm.
you've spoken on so much, not just value, because it's spoken on a lot of value, but you've spoken to so many different parts of um, community, of self, of growth, of exploring, of being uncomfortable, and being resilient through it. If you had a message to a younger Keonte, a younger you, what would that message to be?
It's funny, like the lead up of that question, because in talking about um celebrating yourself, um to a certain extent, of course, I mean, because but my advice for myself would be to do that more. To my younger self would be to do that more, man. I've never, ever celebrated any of my victories, or what can be looked at as a victory. Like, for any award I've won, I've never ever celebrated it. The moment that I got the award, I'm on stage thanking people, thank you so much. My mind is thinking about, okay, what's next? Let's how are we going to handle the press with this? Do we want to spread this? Just, this is a victory, so we should be spreading this. How are we going to go about it? Okay, should I be releasing something right after this? Like, my mind is always going to what's next, so I never gave myself a chance to celebrate, ever. I'm learning to do that now. I'm doing that. It's, you know what, it's a slow process, but any progress is good. So um that would be my advice to myself, and honestly, also just being yourself. I was so young. Like, I've been doing it since I was 6 years old. So, like, coming into the industry, um, as a younger person, you don't know yourself. You don't know what you really want to do. You're listening to the direction of other people, what they see, what their vision for you may be. And I'm not going to say that that was wrong, because I was younger. They didn't know. I didn't know who I was either. Um, so I just kind of listened to the direction of other people, instead of just kind of, I guess, feeling whatever I felt inside, and just knowing, as far as vision, as where I want to go, being able to express that and tell people that without feeling like, um, I was wrong. There's a lot of times where I just felt like, no, they know what they're talking about because they've been doing it for longer than I have. So, I should listen to them, instead of just being myself. And that just kind of means whatever it means to you. Like, I mean, I'm home right now. Like, I'm wearing this sweater and a freaking a freaking snow hat or whatever the case may be. But I'm comfortable. I'm just chilling. Like, it's just about being able to accept those things. And I didn't know that. I didn't realize that, when I was younger. Like, you can go in a boat and you can dress fancy and look nice and do all those things, and that can actually be for yourself. Like, it doesn't mean that you're going to put on for people to give you compliments. um, when I'm out in a boat, nobody sees me like this, but it's mainly because I feel good about myself, so I want to I want to look good. um, Whereas before, I was definitely not in that space, and it was definitely more of a show than it was me feeling good on the inside. So it's just about um being yourself and being patient with yourself too. Patience, patience, patience. That is so huge. And that was a lesson that I really, really learned this year in 2020, and really am perfecting at this point. Just being patient with the process and with myself too, because we're all a lot of work.
Facts, facts in the biggest way. Um, and I think in kind of the final two, as you're talking about that, I think also I would love to, um, get your thoughts slash get a recommendation from you, um, to youth and young professionals, you know, just around, mobilizing right now, whether it's for themselves individually, whether it's around an idea, but just mobilizing and just the importance of, I guess, the opportunities that they do have just in being themselves, and because I think that's a conversation where there's still, there's a dynamic of now more than ever, of course, especially with COVID and digital, people are questioning like school, but and traditions of just traditional routes of a lot of things, and so that becomes challenging, I think, on more people than ever, on youth and young professionals, because all of a sudden the runways in the past that were like, oh well, you can go this and then you'll be good and you can figure out what else you want to do, all of a sudden they have a lot less time and there's a lot more decisions that they have to make at younger ages. And if school is not necessarily the best thing they're at, or if they don't know how to get more work experience or whatever, um, those are stressors. But the other side of that is, we're in a time right now where with digital, with social media, with all of these different opportunities, they can have access to more opportunities than anyone who's come before them, even with not, even with having limited devices, or even with not knowing what they want to do or knowing those next steps. So I'd love just to get, your voice around some of those opportunities that they do have, just to be mobilized.
Yeah, honestly, just use the thing that you have. Let me tell you something. YouTube is an amazing thing. YouTube is an amazing thing for sure. Like, I mean, you can just find in the internet period, you can just find everything and anything that you want to find on there. A lot of the things that I learned about production and um, songwriting, all those different things came from YouTube. Just came from just wanting to study the craft, and become good at what you do. And a lot of that is doing the research, but also how much time that you spend on what you want to do. So it's just all about perspective and what you choose to do with your time, and making those sacrifices, and knowing that every decision that you make, um, is actually going to be the right decision for your life, period, regardless of whether you feel like it worked out or not. Like, in the end, you'll see the beauty in it. Like, like even what I was saying before, like not realizing that the beauty in me not having the team was that I actually got to do the stuff myself, and that I was actually willing to do it. um so it's just about, honestly, just about perspective, and how you choose to use your time. um and honestly, every decision that you make will lead to um what you're supposed to be doing. So just figuring out the things that you like, which is just as important as figuring out the things that you don't like. um all of those things just lead to what you'll end up doing in your life, and you may not know, you may not have a decision what you want to do, but just go out there, put yourself out there, and do different things. I still do a bunch of different things. I love to try new things. um, so there's never an age limit on how much you can learn, and how long you should be learning for. You should be learning all the time. So just utilize those things: the internet, YouTube, and the people around you. Mentors are super important, and super important in any field and anything that you want to do. um, just somebody to guide you and help you, and to give you access to that information and their experiences walking through some of the things that you may enjoy. So again, it's just about looking around. We literally all have resources. Literally all have those resources in some way, form. There's a variety of ways to get information, and to try new things. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We all have access to that, because it's just about perspective, and utilizing the people that's around you, and the things that you actually have.
I think the last question before we get that official sign off, looking at everything that you've talked about, and the momentum and the authenticity and the opportunity and the faith, what's next for Keonte Beals?
What's next? Well, I just opened my company, KBeals Entertainment. So I've been doing a lot of work with that behind the scenes, putting things in place. Um, and it's crazy too, like just to even be living exactly like how I saw myself living, um, as far as what I'm doing at the age of 6 years old. It was always a goal of mine to have my own company, to be an entertainer. Um, but I also have a love in doing artist development. So helping folks bring that artist out of them and that vision out of them. So that's just kind of what my future entails. Just continuing on this crazy up and down life of entertainment, and hopefully helping some other artists come into full fruition as well, just the same way I have. So that's what my future entails.
Appreciate the insight, the energy, and definitely looking forward to obviously continuing following along and plug in all of the different places. So might as well just get it right now on site. Where are the different places that people can find you, your music, um, you know, any information about the work you do or how to even book you and get a hold of you? What are those different places and what does that look like?
Yeah, so you can definitely find everything on my website, KeonteBeals.com. All my socials are on there, but to find me on all social media as well is just Keonte Beals across the board. Um, and you can get all the information you need there with everything that I do, as well as my company too.
Thank you. Thank you. The final thing, we need that official sign off. So
I'm Keonte Beals. This is our journey of voices.